And now for something slightly different, not completely different. But so this is Team Brief, and some of you will be thinking, oh, what on earth is that? And some of you, you'll be thinking that are a bit longer in the tooth. Oh, yeah, we've had all that before. Team Brief, newly launched today, so you're privileged to be on the receiving end of the first trial run. So ordinarily, I would do this to the senior leadership team, and then there's a correspondence and a conversation. It's rewritten, and it cascades across the organisation. So it's a two-way process. So, but today, because of the opportunity, you get it direct. So one of the things I'd like you to do, because next time we do it, we'll be doing it in that cascade way, is to let myself or Yolanda know if you don't get it. Because unless it cascades across and down and through to everybody, it's not doing the job it needs to do. So that's your one action. And all feedback welcome. When just a little story starts off. When Yolanda first said, John, one of the ways to really compliment and embellish and engage across the trust to all the wonderful people in all our teams is to do Team Brief. And I'm going, yeah, I've done it before since about 1992, and it's pants, Yolanda, it doesn't work. She goes, that's because you haven't been doing it right. Do it like this. So we've rejigged it and rewritten it and taken lots of feedback from things like the National Staff Survey. We've taken feedback from individuals and teams and focus groups about what it is that we need to do to get across the whole of this wonderful trust. And this is the output. So commentary, comments, welcome. Essentially what I'll do, we're going to talk about some key messages from the board, what's on our radar, what's on your radar, sort of things that are in the offing, but also just to recognise some of the things that have been in the recent past that may have been on our minds, like or the pandemic, for example. But just then, I'll pause at what seems a reasonable time. I'm very happy to receive questions from the floor. Fire away. I think we've got microphones and people wandering around, so try and make it a bit more interactive, because me droning on may get a bit tedious. Well, not me. Regular feedback I get from my team is that it is tedious. So, first of all, in terms of key things to talk about, I do want to spend just a few minutes reflecting on the pandemic. I think it would be a bit of an omission if we didn't. It's been such an important, major, significant part of all our lives, both at work but also at home and with our families and our friends. And the last 2 years has been bloody difficult, hasn't it? In lots of ways. And if I touch wood, if I could, the latest wave is receding. But we said this a number of times before, and let's hope that's the end of it for a bit. But hopefully it is. But the most important thing that I want to say is a huge, massive thank you to every single one of you for what you've done, both individually, collectively, in your teams over the last 2 years, because it's been a really difficult time. It has been unprecedented, but you, with your contributions, have kept the show on the road. We've kept our services open. We've had to adapt. We've had to redeploy people. We've had to do all sorts of stuff to make sure that we can continue to do what we're here for, which is to provide the best care we can for all the vulnerable people that need our services, whether they be mental health, learning disability, autism, community, physical health, etc. So that's hugely important that we recognise that and your contribution. So would you mind, as a starting off, giving yourselves a big, huge round of applause for what you've done? There's a really important aspect of pandemic. There's people talk about recovery and people talk about make sure we take the learning, and we do need to do that. It's critically important. But as ever, the day job rolls in, doesn't it? And there's waiting lists, and there's demand, and there's referrals, and there's no beds, and there's no staff, and it's really, really tough. But we're committed to making sure that we do capture that, the learning. There's things that have worked really well, hasn't there, in terms of whether it's Teams. I know it can get a bit tedious, but the benefits, the efficiency benefits of clicking onto a Teams call and getting updated, remarkable. But you don't want to be doing it 8 hours solid in your office with no human contact. There's things that have worked less well, and I think we're starting to understand some of the psychological impact of whether it's we working from home and being distant from your team, the psychological impact of that disconnect, and what are the pros and cons of being able to see service users and patients on video calls or on phones rather than face to face. And I think that will emerge, and we need to make sure that we capture that for the future. And we talk about getting back to business as usual, but will it be business as usual as it was? I don't think it will. Because from that learning, we're in a different place, and the world moves on, and services need to adapt for the future too. So that's the key thing I just wanted to say about the pandemic, and we brace ourselves. I think we've done across all 3 clinical divisions and across the corporate enabling services. The response has been phenomenal. Right. Pause. The next paragraph is about the CQC. The Care Quality Commission. Many of you will have been involved in hosting them over the 3 months from the beginning of February to the end of April. And that's an achievement in itself. This core inspection was very different to what we're used to. So almost every week there were small teams in, visiting you, inspecting you, interviewing you. And I hope you felt reasonably prepared as you could be, but also that you got the opportunity to showcase the brilliant work that you do. Because one of the key things about the CQC, we don't do it for the CQC, do we? We do it to exhibit the great care that we're able to provide. I know the challenges, some of it was a bit difficult, and we came from quite a difficult place back in the start of 2019. We'd had a pretty tough inspection with some very disappointing results, but I'm confident that we have moved some of that on quite significantly. At the minute, in terms of state of play, we're starting to get we've had some verbal feedback from the core services and the focus visits that they've done across all the divisions. And we're starting to get some of the draft reports with the new ratings on. So we've had 1 so far, and there'll be a number of more to come in the coming weeks. And they'll be collated, and we'll get a re-rating as a trust. The one that's outstanding is Rampton High Secure Services. We're expecting a re-inspection in the coming weeks, and I know people there and support teams are helping prepare for that. And then it will be complete, and we will receive the feedback. I can't say any more than that in terms of the content of the drafts. It's CQC like it to be, it's confidential in draft form until they publish it, and then we can talk about it. But like I say, a huge thank you to everybody that's been involved, and your engagement in that process of preparation, because it's for really good core reasons. And hopefully we'll have something positive to say that in the coming weeks and months. In terms of related key messages, so external, whether regulation, inspection, feedback is always critically important for such huge and diverse organisations like ourselves. So we've got our own internal monitoring mechanisms, which are good and help us keep on track, but it's that external different perspective that's critical. The other thing that really helps form a view of, okay, so how we're doing is the National Staff Survey. And you'll have seen over the last few weeks and months a commentary on this year's feedback from yourselves. So again, a huge thank you for those of you that did do a response. We were at, I think, sort of something like 56% of staff responded. So over 5,000 pieces of commentary on how we're doing. The best trusts get up to the mid-60s, sometimes 70%, to give you a sense of where that is. We were down at 38, 39% a few years ago, so that's a huge improvement in terms of people being engaged in the conversation. It's part of the board, and it's part of my job to make sure that we respond to that in terms of, these are the themes, you said, together we've done this, together we plan to do that. This year, the other important thing about a national survey is that we don't lurch from year to year with an action plan that we say, these are the 3 things we're going to do, then we get a load more feedback and do 3 different things. So there are some themes that form the foundation of what's going to make this a great place to work, and a focus on making it better for staff and improving our services for patients. One of the key themes, you'll know this is one of my core values, is around the culture of the place. We need to create the environments where positive, inclusive, compassionate cultures flourish. And we need to help support all our people, all our colleagues to be able to contribute and do that. The reports from this year's survey is mixed. There's some really positive movement forward, but equally there's some stuff that we've either slipped back a little bit on, or it's clear there's still a lot of work to do. So in terms of the 4 sort of takeaway bullet points, if you like, about National Staff Survey, is continuing to work on positive cultures, looking at the just and restorative, but kindness, civility and respect. And what's it like to be on the receiving end of me? What's it like to be on the receiving end of you in all that you do? And that self-awareness about, okay, let's take a minute to think what that must have been like for the person on the end of the phone, or on the end of the email, or on the end of my conversation whilst making a coffee. And it's those sort of things that collectively can make a huge impact on us as a place. The second one we hear a lot about is staff health and well-being. We've got, I think, a really well-established health and well-being service now, but it's not everybody knows about it. We've still got a lot to do in terms of spreading the love of health and well-being. I don't mean this to sound cliche, but our staff colleagues are the most important asset, and the working environment, particularly over the last 2 years, but not just then, are tough places to work. And we need to make sure, particularly as a mental health and learning disability trust, with hopefully high levels of psychological insight and mindedness, we need to make sure that staff health and wellbeing offer is tailored to meet the needs of all our people, but that people are aware of it and can use an increasing options menu of the sorts of things that will help. So you will see more evidence of that in the coming year as we work together to describe what a really high-flying health and wellbeing offer can be. We've heard, I think, some superb examples already this morning about inclusivity and diversity and equity. And again, that's a really core pillar of one of the things that we'll be continuing to focus on. This is nothing new for this organisation. We have some improvements in some of the National Staff Survey scores around staff being able to feel more able to speak up and to raise issues, particularly around harassment, racism and bullying, and feeling like there's a more positive response, which is great news in terms of some of the things that have been a very stuck organisation here for some time. But we know it's one of those continual quality improvement things, isn't it? To create these inclusive cultures, we can't let up, we can't get lax. we can't get complacent on that work because it's critically important for all of us to be able to flourish in these environments. And the fourth commentary, which was probably quite the strongest commentary this year, is around and supporting your careers, your development, and that links with quite a strong commentary on our appraisal system. It needs transforming. It's become, for all sorts of reasons, a bit lacking. We haven't, I don't think, prioritised it sufficiently as being a core part of supporting every individual's progress to get them to flourish, to be the person and the team player that they want to be. So again, as part of this engagement over the coming weeks and months along those 4 themes, look out for it, get involved, put your comments in, put your suggestions in, because we're not saying by any stretch that this is complete. This is what you said, this is what we did. This is what you said. Together, we will continue the conversation to make sure that we can create some options to say, well, we think this will work. Here's some good evidence. Let's drive and develop this. And if it doesn't, that doesn't matter, because you take the learning and try something else. But we've got to transform how we use appraisal to support people, to feel that it's a useful and valuable thing to be doing. Yolanda's told me, I told you I was under instruction to pause at appropriate places for questions. Let's take a pause now while I take a sip. There's more to come, but has anybody got anything burning they want to sort of ask about any of those particular themes? Don't be shy. There's a lady there on my left.
Hi, Lynn Williams.
Hi, Lynn.
How are you doing? Wonderful to be here today, by the way, and it's just fantastic. I actually really do feel part of the organisation. I've been around for 6 months in a virtual world, so it's just great to see everybody today. Just wanted to take the opportunity to say that. My question, John, is that the themes that you've described, for me, the cross-cutting element of this is actually around improvement, and I'm wondering how we can start to bring improvement into our conversations more, and I think particularly through comms and so on, because improvement will help improve the staff survey, improvement will help to improve experience of appraisal, it will improve joy at work, which I'll be talking about this afternoon. It's definitely around inclusivity, all of those key areas, and I think we need to get that conversation really underway, and I'm just wondering, through these team briefs in particular, how we can actually start to grow that conversation and make those connections. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. And it's having people of your calibre join the organisation to help us do that. But you're right. And I think, personally, for me, it goes back to that self-awareness and insight thing, saying, this is how we do things, but could it be better? To challenge yourself at the end of the day or at the end of the week or at the end of a conversation. Rather than accepting the status quo, and I think it sort of links to some of the things that Joan was saying earlier, that this is okay, but I want it to be better than that. And what mechanisms can we facilitate for people to be able to feel able to contribute? And again, this is always work in progress, isn't it? I'm a fervent believer in continuously getting better, continuously improving. What was great 5 years ago, 10 years ago, can quickly become stale and past its sell-by date. So I think there's a huge amount around these engagement conversations, but also giving people permission. I still think we're a bit top-heavy in the bureaucracy. Good organisations need good bureaucracy, but at the same time, you can become a bit bogged down in it. So it's that permission. It's okay to fail. But if you're going to fail fast, take the learning and try something different. And don't be downhearted. Don't get too sort of sucked into, because there is opportunity to move things forward. That's off the top of my head, Lynn. No, you can't ask a supplementary.
Opportunity of the Design Collaborative Huddle at the moment as well, and I would encourage people to come and share their ideas with us, because we want to be able to support you and get a circle of support around you to develop your improvement opportunities, be they small or be they big. So, yeah.
Say that again, then. What is it?
Design collaborative huddle that's been running as a pilot for the last 2 months. People can send in a proposal about their thoughts and ideas through the design collaborative, through the QI hub. So please do that. I'm just going to quickly, unashamedly say I've just been on a call with Mark Harrison from Intermountain in Canada, and he's just been talking about what made his services great, and it was very much around developing the huddle approach and the quality improvement running all the way through the work that they did. So that was a real affirmation, I think, for the direction of travel we're going in. Thank you.
Brilliant. So they got it. Design collaborative huddle. Get involved. There was a hand here. Tabitha.
Mine is not a question, John, but it's a suggestion in terms of how we can move. Thanks, Lynn, for saying that you've got the collaborative hub. I think we need to hear from staff sometimes in terms of how we can improve our services. Rosa mentioned something about leading on shared decision-making, which we are promoting across the ICS. And it is a model where exactly what you've said, empowering our staff to actually have a voice and actually say how we can do things better rather than tell them what we think we can do better. It has worked in a lot of trusts that are achieving excellence and aiming to achieve excellence. And I think North Healthcare, we can do that, listen to our staff in terms of how we can actually improve services.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that hopefully there's a sense that we are listening and more people are contributing to the conversation. But at the same time, we know it doesn't reach everybody. So 56% is great, but what does that leave? 44 that don't, which is a large number. So yeah, we've always got to sort of, how do we do that more? So I think there's the lights in my, is that Sharon? Yeah.
I just want to ask a question about well-being. Obviously, the Trust has done quite a lot, but I do feel sometimes it's not hitting the right people. So I know we do mindfulness, we put it on Connect. There's certain times when you can connect into that. But staff still feel that they haven't got the permission to do it. And I think we really need to get that message across that this is really important. I hear staff saying to me, I'm going on annual leave. I'm worried about what's happening back at work. I'm not enjoying myself. I'm crying all the time. And I'm thinking, this shouldn't be happening. So I think when it comes to well-being, we just need to make sure that it's hitting the right people, that they know it's important and they've got permission to get involved in things. And also to hear what staff think about well-being. What is it that they really need instead of what we're providing sometimes?
Yeah. Now, again, I think that's a spot-on observation. There is some assessment within the health and wellbeing service about what the feedback's like, and the feedback's pretty positive. But you're right for wellbeing, but also more broadly, again, to go back to my point about connecting and engaging with people. So I certainly get a real sense that there are pockets where we're just not reaching. Sweeping generalisation warning. So, for example, I think ward staff particularly, I can sit there and send my emails out and we can put stuff on Connect, but, a full-on shift, it's working late, you're rushing, not necessarily got time to sort of sit down for 20 minutes and flick through Connect and what's available. So part of the conversation and the engagement is, that's a very valid point. Tell us what would work. How would we do that? Is it more roadshows? Is it coming out to see you? What other sort of mechanisms? Social media is very potent, isn't it, way of reaching people? So, yeah, thank you. I think, right, one more, then I'll add, because I need to move on, I think.
From the Health and Wellbeing team. So if anybody has got any questions or wants to raise anything, we are here for the rest of the day.
Brilliant. There you go. Input, please. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So turn the page, new paragraph. I would talk a little bit about money. Again, you might be thinking, oh no, this doesn't matter to me, but We spend over £500 million worth of taxpayers' money every year as an organisation. That's a lot of money, isn't it? And it's really important that we squeeze the maximum value out of that each pound. But at the same time, there are some fundamental principles around how we use that money. So again, back to my value base, is that the essential thing is that we continue to provide safe, quality services for all our patients, service users, support our carers and families that need our support, because these are, some of the most vulnerable people in society that we're serving. We don't need to go into the detail of how the money works, but just to give you some headlines, that as you can imagine, we are regulated and monitored to within an inch of our lives around how we use our money. That's this organisation, this trust has always lived within its means. We've never posted what's called a deficit, so we've never been in the red. And I'm pleased to say for the financial year that's just finished, so 21-22, Alison Wilde's team are totting up the columns, but we will post that we've hit break even for this year, so we're in balance, no deficit, which is a tremendous achievement given the vagaries of the pandemic. So some of the core rules of how the money works in the NHS has been suspended during the last 2 years. So your spending plan is submitted and approved before the start of the year. That hasn't happened. We still haven't signed off this financial year's plan yet, and that's a national issue. We do something I'm sure you're all familiar with, which is called the Financial Improvement Programme, or Cost Improvement Programme, the SIPs and the FIPs, brackets cuts. And we have to evidence a very significant FIP year on year, but we haven't had to do that for the last couple of years. So it's a really important discipline in terms of reducing waste, in terms of being maximally efficient and making sure that we use our money well. But we've, for obvious reasons why, we're out of that discipline. But this, you'll probably have noticed that change in tone from central governments, from the budgets, the national budgets, the Department of Health, the Treasury, around the commentary about the NHS. It's got to live within its means. We can't go along forever posting huge deficits financial deficits in acute care, which has been tolerated for some time. We have to evidence that we're efficient. We have to live within our means. And haven't you noticed that the public validation of the NHS has slipped quite significantly over the last year? And that's the political commentary. I'm not going to make comment on that, but it gives you a sense of the environment that we're going to be moving into from an NHS and care world. It's going to be really, really tough. And it'd be great if I could say, and these are the things that are coming over the hill that are going to make it better. You, of course, sitting in front of me in the room, and people like you and your leadership and your contribution that will help make it better. But the environment, the landscape that we're going to be working in from a financial perspective is going to be hard, at least over the next year, 18 months, because the national budgets are tightening, and the demand for greater efficiency is not going to go away, and I think will double. Overlay that with the huge staffing challenges that we have, that you're all managing day in, day out. Load onto that the increase in demand, whichever sector you're working in, and the increased acuity. So we're seeing more people who are iller at the point of contact. That's a recipe for some tough times. You might say, "Oh, that's all very well, John. That's not making me feel much better." But go back to what I've been saying previously. If we get the right working cultures, if we tune into Rosa's conversation about collaboration and working closely together, both within the trust but externally too, I'm confident that we can meet some of these challenges. But again, part of our role is to make sure we can facilitate things to make that easier where we can. So that's the money. So next key message is around the Queen. So 2 things to say about the Queen. Although she didn't do it in person, you'll have seen this week Prince Charles read the Queen's speech opening Parliament. There's some important things in there, and specifically, some of you will have seen the bill around draft consultation on the new Mental Health Act. That's a pivotal piece of new legislation which is going to, I think, significantly change the landscape that mental health learning disability services work in, and it's going to set the tone for the coming years. The 1983 Act, and this is making me feel old. So when I first started, it was new, and everyone was saying, "Oh, this is great," because before that it was 1959, and before that it was called the Lunacy Act back in the 1800s. Can you believe that? But there's some major changes of legislation within that draft, which I think the vast majority of people will see as a positive step forward into the 21st century, based on a sort of rights-based approach, fundamental safeguards for protecting patients. And one of the most important things, I think, is that learning disability and autism per se won't be diagnoses that you can detain people in hospital for en masse, en bloc. That rightly reflects the world that we live in now, isn't it? That we can't use gross generalisation. So those of you that it relates to, get involved, join the conversation. As a trust, we'll be collating some conversation about that and providing some feedback to the draft, because we're an important player in that. The second part to do with the Queen is her Platinum Jubilee. I'm sure you're all involved in making your own plans for the extended bank holiday. On the 14th of May, the Nottinghamshire Show at the Newark Showground is hosting a whole event. We've got 3 stalls as a trust that people have put a lot of work in terms of prepping, but get involved, join in, go and visit. There's lots to do with recruitment and developing a great career at Notts Healthcare and in the mental health and learning disability services. And also more broadly for the Platinum Jubilee, there's lots of plans around decorating the wards and teams and having tea parties, both for patients and carers, but also for ourselves. It's an important time to celebrate the Platinum Jubilee, but I think also to recognise the very high esteem that the Queen holds the NHS in. So you remember she awarded the NHS the George Cross last year, and I know we've had a lot of really positive commentary about those pin badges that we're sending out, and it was heartening to receive that. How am I doing for time? If I just go through some divisional updates from the 3 clinical divisions, and then again take some questions before we finish. So remember, we've got 3 clinical divisions: mental health and learning disability, community health services, and forensic. Just a few bullet points from each, because although it's important to recognise and continue to strive to be one trust in a sort of collective family working together, it's also important to realise that we have some very distinct and some very diverse services, and the magic is managing the both of those. Mental health and learning disability, as with many places over the last few months, has really been challenged with day-to-day getting the staff in to be able to stay open, to be blunt about it. I know many of you have been involved in that, and it's probably the most common commentary I get, whether it's from emails or when we go on visits, that what's the one thing? Staff, John. More staff, more staff, more staff. And some of the figures of absence through COVID or isolation related to COVID over March and April were probably the highest, most eye-watering absence figures of the whole of the pandemic. I think caught us all a bit by surprise, really, because we'd just been through the Christmas thing when it was like Omicron, oh my God. But whatever that variant was, people weren't getting admitted to hospital in quite the same numbers, but it was knocking people out, wasn't it, for a couple of weeks at a time. And that's a major achievement. The return and the improvement in the figures has come along at different rates. So, but in mental health services, that's probably the division that's most challenged around staffing, around the demand and acuity, particularly for bedded services. So it's a national issue. So there are very few mental health general beds and intensive care beds available across the country. And having to manage that and to change the crisis team to manage people at home that would ordinarily be in hospital, it's been all hands to the pump, and that's tough. Again, there's perhaps some sense that it's at least not getting any worse, but there's still a lot of work to do to survive this challenging time. And that's all the knock-on effects, doesn't it, of increased use of agency and costs go up and breakdown in continuity of care. So again, it's really important that we can support people as best we can to get them through this piece. On a positive note, one of our ambitions is to continue to develop alliances and collaborative working. So we've recently employed some people from a charity called Double Impact up in the north of the county, working with local teams, and they're a drug user charity, now working collaboratively with our staff to provide an integrated service for people with those collated problems. And again, a huge area of morbidity and need. And this is a great example. Likewise, we've put some collaborative working in with Mind in the south of the county, working with our local mental health teams to provide some additional support around stabilisation and resilience modelling. So some great work. And we're going to be looking to see how we can develop more of those alliances with what's called community and third sector voluntary organisations, because, again, there's a huge amount of skill, experience and resource there that good organisations link with really well. Of course, all services have been under the microscope of the CQC, not least community health services. And for community health, I think even more challenging, because many of those services not been inspected since 2014. If it's every year, you get into the habit of what to expect. But again, a huge thank you to all of you that hosted the CQC in community health. Again, we've had some positive verbal commentary, but we've learnt to know that that doesn't always translate into that nice chart at the end where you've got your red and your orange and green boxes of good. So we've got fingers crossed, and we're awaiting those core inspection reports to come through. Huge pressure on community health services around what's called the urgent and emergency care pathway. So these people with physical health problems that pole up into emergency departments, get admitted to acute hospitals like Queen's and King's Mill, but then get stuck for all sorts of reasons, not least because they're poorly, but because their families may not be able to have them back because they can't manage. The support from social care is under huge financial challenges and just isn't there. And if the beds get full, other people can't get admitted. So our community teams have been valiantly trying to what's called increase flow out, but also to intervene early to stop people having to come in the first place. And so it's a really transformative programme in community health services, which I know many people leads in in that division are really engaged in, because there's a massive opportunity in terms of the transformation and making things better and being more efficient in that division. And then finally, from the clinical divisions, is about forensic services. Again, under the CQC microscope, I know Rampton colleagues still got that joy to come in the next couple of weeks, and something that we've been on tenterhooks for many months during the pandemic, thinking, well, are they coming, are they coming, are they coming? And then they don't come. So fingers crossed for June, July, we'll have that. And we run something called improvement boards that many of us are involved in. I chair, and the Rampton Improvement Board most recently met and was really able to evidence, I think, some huge transformational change in terms of the culture, in terms of the quality ambition, in terms of the engagement and supporting staff. So again, cautiously optimistic. And more broadly across the Forensic Directorate, we've already had some, as I said earlier, some positive commentary, and we'll await that feedback. With slight trepidation in my heart, I've just had my 5-minute warning, which is perfect actually, because the other division that we often tend to forget is corporate enabling services. And again, just to take a pause to reflect on some of the amazing work that all of those teams, in terms of facilities, in terms of human resources, in terms of digital IT, in terms of estate, in terms of all the ones that I can't remember off the top of my head that I don't want to forget about because you think, oh, it doesn't know. But joking aside, without those support services, we wouldn't be able to function. And some of the challenges that they've risen to during the pandemic to almost overnight transform stuff, to set up and support the community vaccination centres and create the facilities, to a huge staff bank in association with Sherwood Forest Hospitals, has just been phenomenal. Just to name but a few. It's not a comprehensive list, but more broadly to recognise their tremendous contribution. So, there's some key themes. Remember to, if this works properly, this cascades out and across and through and down. If it works, you might be on the receiving end of this in a different guise in a day or two or a week or two's time. But we need your feedback, because this, in response to one of the questions earlier, this is a different method to see whether we can reach the parts in the famous Heineken commercial that traditional beers can't reach. You're probably not old enough to remember that. But, so before I finish, any burning questions that anybody wants to ask before we close and we go on to the next? Oh, so I'll come back to you. Got Neil.
Thanks, John. I'm Neil Thompson, and I'm Staff Side Chair for Community Health Services Division and a district nurse by background. And I was interested in a comment you made in relation to the consultation about the new mental health services bill, and you said that those people to whom it was relevant should be commenting. And my comment back to you would be is that it is relevant to all of us, so all of us should be getting involved with that consultation because it is absolutely vital.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you, Neil. Lady there. Making you run around.
Sarah Blanchard, I'm a Dementia Outreach CPN. You're talking about us getting involved and communicating down to the front line. Very often we don't have the time. My lunchtime is shoveling food down my neck and writing the ever-increasing amount of paperwork. I've got colleagues with caseloads of nearly 50, and the referrals keep coming in and coming in and coming in, and we're on our knees. And we don't have time to read the stuff that comes out. I'm the only person in our area that actually reads your updates, which I feed out to my colleagues. But we don't have the time for all that. And we're too tired at the end of the day, and all the nice relaxation and all that, it's not happening. And it's that. And I think in terms of a lot of the stuff that comes over the email, because we haven't got the time, it just gets deleted. You need to come and talk to us. You need to come and be on the front line and do this kind of thing in all the little areas so that we can come and talk. And you get a far better response.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm going to channel my inner Joan in terms of what one of the things that stuck in my mind from this morning. So I'm going to turn that around and say we can do this, and we can completely appreciate the challenges around the demands of staff. You know, it's important that we get out and it's a regular commentary. You know, this is all very well and good, John, but we haven't got time for this. We don't do lunch. We can't do health and wellbeing, but we can do it. And it's really important that we do it. And it's really important that we embed it within the culture, that it's accepted that we do it. And it's small steps. You know, whether we have a conversation about pausing email for a bit, or whether we celebrate a coffee break. Small things make a big difference, but we've got to have the attitude and the ambition to make it better. And I hear exactly what you're saying, and people will be sitting there thinking, yeah, I agree with that. It's all, you know, but we've got to listen. We've got to create ways that people feel able to contribute, and that's why I come to work, because it's important we do it and we get it right and we get better and we keep getting better and keep improving and keep taking the feedback. If it doesn't work, we'll take something else. We'll do it a different way. Thank you.